organizers to have put this event together and also enable me once more to meet a colleague of mine who studied architecture with me, Ken Yang, with whom I've been for 40 years. In the last 50 years, we have lived in a world we've got used to, the idea of growing wealth, increasing industrialization, economic development, relative peace. The world has been our oyster, but now something else is beginning to happen, and let me assure you, nobody understands what this means. There is corruption, there is increasing number of failed countries, unpredictable global weather, lack of growth, radical extremism, global modernity. And I would like you as designers to look at this background to see what we can do for this. These are the four aspects of what is happening on the globe that I would like to draw your attention to. Now, these are very serious consequences, and if we can look at each of them. Let's look at the declining growth. This is global. Growth has been declining globally for the last 10 years. Please don't be under the impression that the world is getting richer. It is getting poorer every year. Productivity is in decline. Whatever anybody tells you in the economic papers, in the media, please do not forget that we are gradually shrinking in terms of our capacities and growths. If you see the manufacturing jobs, and industrialization was our great hope, they have begun to reduce very drastically. In the case of India, for instance, we are facing, which will not be admitted by the government, but we are facing premature deindustrialization. India is deindustrializing and has been for 5 years. Now, we have to see this in the perspective of what you think the new cities will do and what they will work in. But what is also happening is that I'm going in reverse. What is also happening is that fewer and fewer people are getting richer and richer. So the red line is the wealth, global wealth owned by 62 people. And the top line is what the rest of the globe owns. So we have got this disparity happening. And I think we are, in India, getting into this kind of a society. On the other hand, we have advancing technology, we have changing work patterns, we have rising collaborations, new kinds of global company platforms, Flipkart, etc., and new parties, AAP and Trump and populism. So the media is much more concerned with this end of it. It actually doesn't pay any attention to what is happening at the deeper level. So I want to ask where the impact of these changes is. The impact of all these changes are going to be felt on the city. By 2050, 50% of our population is going to be living in the city. And considering what I've just told you, I'd like to come back to my question, what will become of us now? Now, we are very familiar with the present city. It actually, 60% of the people live in slums. That's not going to go away if we design better buildings, right? A few people are very rich. That's the Indian city. This is the 19th century city. And so, we have to ask ourselves, what is the future city going to be? And ideas about the future city are divided amongst two kinds of people. The one kind of person believes that we can fix our cities by investing money. The other people believe that we have to change the nature of our city. This is basically the divide in all the ideas, not only about Indian cities, but basically about global cities, but it's valid for India. The fix our city experts, believe that the problem of 200 years of colonial rule, 70 years of mismanagement of independence can certainly be done away with if you invest money in the existing city. So that's generally, this is an argument backed by McKinsey's, the Boston Consulting Group, the World Bank, the IMF, and all the financial institutions. They believe that if you invest in infrastructure, you can fix your cities. Now, let's not forget the number of people who live in our big metros. Let's look at the money that they think, McKinsey thinks, but actually they've underestimated. According to McKinsey, we need $1.2 trillion to invest in our metros to get the cities going. But, you know, we don't have the money. So, look at our external debt. We are borrowed up to the hilt. And now the global financial institutions are offering us another few $1 trillion to invest in our cities to fix our infrastructure. Now, the problem is that this is fine, okay, let's do it, let's borrow the money. But there's something else happening. Global warming. Global warming is beginning to affect us, but we do not recognize it. The climate is changing. The floods are increasing. Now, this is not going to go away with any form of investment. If we look at the water scarcity map of the World Bank, you will see there are two countries in yellow, which is India and China. And it shows there's no water. And I'll tell you a little bit about the studies we have done. That's the World Bank prediction of the availability of water in India by 2050. So, if we don't change the way we live, we will be reminded of living in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria. They're all facing the same problem, but they've gone over the tip. And we have still sat ourselves down comfortably. It's not as if China has had a better experience. China followed the path that we are following, and we are now beginning to catch up with the impact of that. So, let us look at how we should address this problem. Basically, there are three cycles of time that I'd like you to bear in mind. The first cycle of time is the shortest cycle of time, which is your everyday conversation, the media, the newspaper, has absolutely no impact on the direction in which the country is going. The second cycle of time is in a country's history, in a country's culture, is the medium-term perspective. Now, some of the events that take place in the short ripples of time come down and affect a community level activities. But even they don't have a long-term impact. The longest term impact is given by the long duration, which is to do with geography, ecology, culture. That is what actually affects the destination of where the country is going. To give you an example, the Russian Revolution was started in the short duration by Marx and Lenin. It seeped into the medium duration and for 70 years made hell out of a country and disappeared. There's no trace left of that. So, I implore you as designers only to look at the long perspective. And I'll give you an example of how in history we have had two individual actions done in the short term which have affected us profoundly in the long term. Give you the example of Ashoka, whose battle in Kalinga in 260 BC gave him a deep sense of remorse, and he created extraordinary changes in our country. For 1200 years, not only was Buddhism our religion, but it has influenced permanently our culture. And the second example is Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi, an unselfish man who did individual action in the short span of time, but whose impact not only removed the British Empire from us, but is today with us. It affected South Africa. It has affected the globe. These are examples of individual actions that go into the long-term perspective. And you as designers should not be concerned with any short and medium-term perspectives. Because what matters is the link with the geography, the ecology, the culture of this country, not the day-to-day twists in climate. Now, we have to now look at what the impact has been of short-term and medium-term planning in terms of our cities to show you that it is not really very adequate. Let me give you an example of Delhi. This is an example of Delhi growing with no master planning. Okay, this is short-term perspective planning. It's made for profit. There are no cultural, ecological responsibilities for them. How does Delhi get its water? It gets its water from 400 kilometers in the Himalayas. The entire city of Delhi gets its water from the Himalayas. It's a perfect example of a ludicrous city. If it goes to crime, if it goes to things, it's unecological. So, for anybody who tells me that they can invest money to fix it, I can let him have a try, but he's hanging me because he's putting me in debt. Now, let me look at the other mad scheme the government is into. It's called industrial corridors. And I've had a look, I spent 2 years looking at just one of them, the Mumbai-Delhi Industrial Corridor. And the McKinsey report tells me that 1/3 of the population of India is to move to this region in terms of the smart cities and the industrial centers that are going to be created here in a climate where we are deindustrializing. What's wrong with this project? Let me tell you. Let's have a look at the investments going in. Okay? So this is happening. Let's look at the satellite picture. That's the water available in this area. It is, if you look at I've looked at the tube well tests done by the Water Commission, the entire area has poisoned water underground. We are investing in this project. This is known as a short-term project. This is known as a project which is doomed. And that is the Water Commission's chart on what the water situation is, and that's the area water shortage. This is the footprint of the DMIC. We've done a study of what the water surplus is. The last column will show you the water availability for the new settlements. It isn't there. It's missing. Is somebody taking us for a ride? I see this actually. If you ask me 20 years from now, I go back to the DMIC, I'll see this. Because this is the essence of short-term planning. This is the essence of medium-term planning. This is what is driving our urbanization. I give you an alternative. Therefore, I personally don't support the fund the existing cities and create another catchment market for it. I say we need new cities. The old cities have become dysfunctional. They cannot work again. And I give you the prospect of what we've been working on now. It's called Natural City. Right, Natural City is, in essence, is basically a checkerboard of in principle, if I put it diagrammatically, of green and white areas, urban and rural areas. This is something how it happens like this. It's a complex theoretical project. I'll show you roughly how, very roughly how the layouts are, and this is not, this is purely green architectural construction. And I'll have to rush through this because we don't have very much time, and it's quite difficult to explain how you can redesign the world in half an hour. But roughly, the mix that we are getting, therefore, of urban planning is urban agriculture. For us, the secret of survival of the future city will be urban agriculture. You cannot separate the rural and the urban anymore. I see more than 1,000 natural cities emerging as a savior. Here's a typical plan, for instance, of a natural city. So it's not that it's designed like a grid, but that it has in fact got a certain logic to it. And there is an image of how I imagined the natural city will work. Of course, people ask, what happens with the existing cities? What we have worked out is that a population of 1 million has to form a self-sustaining unit, whether it's in an existing city and is a collection of wards or blocks, or is a new city. But since we are going to have 50% urbanization by 2050, in fact there's going to be a need for a huge number of new cities. And the path that we are following is absolutely disastrous, because we are sending everybody into areas like Bangalore, Delhi and Bombay, and we couldn't care a damn how it sorts itself out. Basically, it is the most irresponsible behavior towards the future of this country that I have seen since independence. Now, we are offering a completely different point of view to how we can survive. This is based on scientific evidence. There's a group of architects and scientists who are working on this, but we do feel we are whistling in the wind, because actually the government is not interested. Let me give you an idea of how we are working on the future. Let me give you the disaster that is awaiting us in Amravati. Amravati, the Chief Minister in his wisdom has decided to locate it on the banks of the Krishna River. Now, that city is being built, as you can see from our study, in the floodplain of the Amravati. It's a real estate venture, and they are continuing to build it. We have now moved the Green Tribunal Court, and we have approached them, and we have told them that this kind of vision of a future capital of Andhra Pradesh is not only 50 years old, it's going to be a disaster for tomorrow, because it has no concern for ecology, employment, agriculture, or any of the things that are going to matter in the coming years. We've given an alternative to them, that you must create a new master plan which is clear of the floodplain. See, what happens in India is, when the rivers flood, the water goes onto the floodplain and it gets absorbed in the sand. And that water is mineral clean and is available. So the tests we have done, of the studies we've done in Delhi, has shown that already 20% of the population in Delhi is getting fed from water in the sand. It's just being extracted out by dozens of tube wells. Now, this source of water has not been looked at all seriously. It's when we approached them and told them that you're taking this water from Himachal, it doesn't make sense when you have a Jamna which is flooding every day. And if you go and build on that floodplain, you've lost the source of water. This is free, mineral quality water. So we approached the Andhra government and said that canal down the center, they wanted the capital complex to be on the water. We said you can make your canal and have your capital complex there, but after the canal is the flood river. You do agriculture on it, you have orchards on it, but don't build on it. Now, these are very, very important perceptions, because the scientists and environmentalists are working in isolation. the real estate, regard them as enemies. Now, we are actually in the process, and I would appeal to you as potential designers that if you do not take the responsibility of understanding the long-term perspectives of where this country is going. We are not surrounded by great people. Huh? We have on our sides Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Nepal, Bangladesh, countries which have failed. We're just hanging in there. And we are hanging in there, we will be tipped. A thing like demonetization turns the country upside down. Please understand the edge on which this country is surviving. Just one global warming, one cyclone hitting Chennai, and it devastates the place. So we have no protective mechanism while we are sailing into this undefined city of smart cities and industrial corridors. The underneath is getting eroded away. So, these are some of the qualities that Amravati we propose for them. Let me, in conclusion, leave you with something to think about. It is our contention that unless we radically rethink our cities, we will not survive the impact of these long-term changes that have already begun. If we start the journey by advocating smart cities and industrial corridors, we have already given up on the future because we have sold it to the private investor. And they will not think about the long term, because thinking about the long term is expensive. And we are not, see, what happens is the media keeps away much of this. If you go to a forum abroad, you hear a lot about this. The global warming and the preparations we have to make, and the way the flooding is being prevented with gates being put in rivers, etc. We're not doing anything. We have 6%, 7% economic growth, highest in the world, and we're not investing in our future. So, with that tragic thought, I shall leave you, but I have great hope that you as designers absolutely are going to reverse this. There is no way that your great-grandchildren are going to be wandering around in desert cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Romi Khosla. That was quite hard-hitting and a lot of food for thought. I'd like to call on the dais Mr. P. Padmakumar, Head HR, St. Gobain India Glass Business, to present Mr. Romi Khosla with a memento as a token of our appreciation.